Hey everyone, welcome to a different portion of the CFL Outsiders. This is GT, of course, and this is a new thing that we're decided we'd start up, and I've wanted to do for a while, and the other MJ and Old Man graciously allowed me to try this out. So this is we're going to call Conversations with GT, and the first one is something that I've wanted to do for a long, long time, and that's question someone who is an NFL fan and lives here in Canada, and in this case lives here in the GTA in my neck of the woods, as to why they're an NFL fan and how and their feelings about the CFL and why they're not a CFL fan. So we're going to have as much of a conversation as possible over the next little bit, and hopefully we'll get some answers and feel at least give you some indications, and then we'll see how it goes from there. I appreciate your patience. This is the first interview for the CFL Outsiders. And we're hoping to do a bunch more with various people, from coaches to players to other people involved around the league. Not necessarily about the games each week, but more about the league in general and just football in Canada in general. So here we go. I want to introduce as our guest tonight, thank you very much, John. John and I have been buds for a while, about 2 years now. And when I was first introduced to John, he immediately started giving me grief about the CFL and has ever since and continues to this day. So he's not wearing his Chargers jersey today, although he threatened to. So we'll take it from there. He does have some CFL connections, of course, being a Chargers fan. He knows all about Doug Flutie being there. He can recite every statistic that Dave Dickinson had while he was there and should have been the number one quarterback. But no, I'm sure he can't. But nonetheless, we'll throw that out there. And for now, let's just get into it. So, John, how you doing today?
I'm really good, thanks, and looking forward to having a chat.
Great. So let's just give, if we could, let's give some background and talk about, if you don't mind, let's talk about your football background. But before we even get into football, let's just talk about generally, as they do in demographic studies, John. Which age group would you fall into? 50 to 55, 60 to 65, 65 to 70? Which age group is yours to fall into?
55 to 60.
Okay, perfect. So that you're right in that generation, a little younger than I am, but not lots. But you might fall into what we are officially call or unofficially call the lost generation of CFL fans, which really started the degradation of the CFL fandom in the general population in Canada. So it'll be interesting to see if you have any input on that. Where did you grow up, John? Which area of the country did you grow up in?
So I grew up mostly in southwestern Ontario. So being connected here in Ontario is really where I grew up.
Okay, so was that like Kitchener area, or more down into Tilsonburg or London?
London and Woodstock was where I grew up, yes.
Okay, so what high school did you go to, and what era was that high school when you were in high school?
So I went to AB Lucas, and, obviously, heck, era. Back when the Bills were horrible, the Detroit Lions were horrible, and I became a fan of the San Diego Chargers because of Eric Coryell. So,
All right, great. So that would have been what, the late '70s, early '80s, or mid '80s,
definitely late
early.
'70s, early '80s.
Okay. All right. I just wondered because that again gives us some indication of, again, I think of that time frame. Did your high school have a football program, and did you play?
We we absolutely had a football program. I started playing football in grade school, just like everybody else, just having fun with the boys. And then when I went to high school, was quite excited about joining the team and being a part of the junior football team, and then played senior football as well. So, been a football
Nice,
fan pretty much my whole life.
nice. And what position did you play?
I was a tight end, so on the line of scrimmage and going out to catch some passes and being quick was a good value.
Nice, nice. Now if I remember correctly, you also grew up in a family with multiple male siblings. So how many brothers do you have?
Yeah, so I have four brothers, and we're all right around the same age. At one point, four of us were playing football at the same high school, so it was pretty exciting.
That's great. That's great. So you mentioned that you became a San Diego fan in those days, and I'm sorry, who was the player again? Because I'm not familiar with them.
So Eric Coryell was the coach, and he really introduced quite a passing game and quite a move the players around the field kind of a standpoint. So it was Chargers. The biggest hiccup for my early days was none of it was on TV because we were before time shifting and all that sort of stuff. I had to read about it or just watch the highlights to be a fan. So
Yeah, no, and that's kind of where we're going to get to in a few minutes. Did you go to Western after high school, or did you go to a different university?
no, I didn't play football after high school. It was my career was pretty much in high school. Played flag and for a few pee-wee teams outside of school, but nothing serious.
Right, did you attend university at Western or at another
No,
school?
no,
No, so okay.
didn't go to university.
Okay, just because I was interested whether you watched their program and got involved with their program in any way. So no. Okay, cool. So when you were so at that time, one of the things, the reason that we call that, if you're not aware, part of the reason that the CFL calls that the last generation is something that you just mentioned, which was blackouts. That was a large portion of that, local blackouts in Toronto and any of the cities across the country. If there was a game in town, it wasn't allowed to be on TV. And that, they say, a lot of people attribute to that to being a whole generation of people that didn't get to watch the games and missed that, in the 80s and early 90s before they moved away from that scenario. So I wondered if that impacted you. In London, it wouldn't have impacted you. You would have been able to see all the games. So did you watch CFL at all in those days when it was on CFL or CTV and CBC?
I never really got even exposed to the CFL until I had graduated from high school and as an adult, and that's where a bit of a connection came with the option of watching some CFL. So no, I was always NFL influenced.
Okay, so that's cool. But you played three down football in high school. You played, or did your school play four down?
No, we played three down.
You played three down, so you were familiar with the game, just not
Yes.
familiar with watching the teams, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Okay, so that kind of answers those questions. What drove the decision to become an NFL fan versus a CFL fan? Was it strictly because you like the jersey? Was it you like that particular coach, or was it just something else?
No, 100%. My drive to the NFL, I I was a very big fan originally, of just watching NFL football in general. So back in the Cowboy era with Terry Bradshaw and Roger Starbuck and Terry Bradshaw with Pittsburgh, that's when my connection with football began. So it was quite early in my childhood when I started really to engage in the game of football and watching it and enjoying it on TV. And obviously, there was much more options with the NFL on TV than the CFL. The
Yeah,
structure of the
even in those
structure of
days with the
Sunday
multiple.
games only.
Yeah, yeah, the different games on, the just the sheer number of teams makes for more games, right? Um, so okay, that's great. Thank you. So have you ever attended an NFL game, or have you been to lots of NFL games, or how
I
do you?
have I have been to many NFL games and mostly to see my Chargers play in different parts of the world and different parts of the thing. We've even traveled to a Super Bowl. We haven't had a ticket to a Super Bowl, but we've traveled just to experience some of the excitement of being around a Super Bowl.
Have you ever attended any CFL games?
Yes, absolutely. So
Okay,
as an adult, I had some good connections and attended a lot of Argo games and been actually to a Grey Cup, but
well,
not
excellent.
to a Super Bowl.
Which Grey Cup?
So it was the one held here in Toronto. Dickens. I'm not even sure I can remember who played or how long ago it was, but it was here in Toronto and it was quite exciting. So
So okay, so it might, yeah. There's been a few. Which stadium was it at? Just out of curiosity.
it was at the Sky Dome.
Okay, Might have been 2012. It might have been the 100th Grey Cup.
Yeah, I think it was. I think
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. There was a lot that was generate. That generated a lot of excitement. So yeah, I was there too. All right. So sorry, I'm glancing down only because I have this piece of paper with a bunch of questions that I wanted to ask. So don't forgive me for doing that. But let me throw something at you. How would you describe your feelings generally about the CFL? I'm going to give you some words, and I would ask you to pick two of the five words that I'm going to give you. Just how would you describe your feelings about the CFL in general? So the words are disdain, ignorance, awareness, tolerate, and enthusiastic.
Wow. I'm not even sure any of those words truly apply.
Okay.
Tolerant makes it sound like, I don't actually like it, but I don't really follow it enough, and have enough engagement in the sport, to even have such a deep feeling for it. The game itself is very different than the NFL, and there's lots of things about the differences between the two sports that I can understand that I like or dislike of it, but I don't think it's a dislike or a tolerance. It's more of a I could take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. It's not a big influence in my life to be involved in what's happening or not happening.
Okay. Alrighty. What other sports do you regularly watch? Do you watch hockey, or do you watch baseball, or what else do you watch?
No. So from a being engaged standpoint, any other sport, it's just because of their big activities. Like with golf, I'm only interested in some of their majors or potentially the Canadian Open when it's here. When it comes to car racing, I'm only really interested in some of the races that are more exciting than some of the others. Baseball, I just follow the Jays because we live here in Toronto. I wouldn't call myself a baseball fan at all. I love March Madness and college basketball. I really enjoy college football as well. So there, to me, any other sport that I'm watching, I'm not as engaged in as I am in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I am too. In that I watch basketball, but I don't, and I'm a Raptors fan, but I don't necessarily watch every game because I know that half the time it's just too much. I have enough on my schedule with just football in the fall, so and through the summer and winter. So yeah, okay, just great. I just wondered if there was something else, if there was another sport that you followed, and how that might impact your viewing and stuff. Alrighty, so then just because we talked about you have been to a couple of games, you're aware of the league, you played three down football. So I'm going to throw a few more words on you just about that I'd like you to pick again. How would you describe your knowledge of the CFL game and slash rules? Would it be 0%? Would it be limited? Would it be you're aware? Would it be you're knowledgeable, or would it, you say you have in-depth knowledge? Which
I,
level do
I
you
would
think?
I would certainly say I'm aware of the rules and how things work in the CFL, and certainly understand the wider field, the bigger end zones, and the longer field itself in general as well. So yeah, and all the rules, even the rouge.
So I think so here we go. So after already we're what, 20 minutes into this conversation, not even quite 15 minutes, and I'm already feeling like you've been giving me the gears for the last 2 years for no apparent reason other than just to give me the gears, because because you obviously know much more about this league that you've led on me on to believe. It'll change the conversation slightly. It may be less antagonistic from both of our points of view, but nonetheless, it should be. Hopefully, we'll keep it as ongoing and as fun as possible. So just going back to the rules, then there are rules, obviously differences, and you're aware of them. So, what rules? What rules do you prefer in the NFL versus the CFL? Which distinct rules do you prefer more NFL wise than CFL wise?
So so the two biggest ones that stand out for me that I really like about the NFL. is the four downs. I much prefer to see a sustained drive and the options of having a couple of different plays at different points of the drive instead of just having to go for 10 yards, not make it, and then go back and sit down because the guy's going to kick. So sustained drives and the four downs really makes a big difference for me, and I certainly enjoy it. And I also very much feel that the Rouge was the most silly thing in known to mankind. I get it that your goalposts are at the beginning of the end zone and you want to give the player the option to run it out or the defense to keep him in the end zone to get an extra point. But I think it's ridiculous that you can get a point because you missed a field
goal. Okay. All right. So you feel that you're in the camp of it rewards failure, basically.
100%.
Okay. Okay. So what? Okay. So then, what rules do you prefer in the CFL versus the NFL? Are there any?
Um, the movement before the ball doesn't scare me. It doesn't bother me that there's five guys running around in the backfield trying to trick the defense. But that might be the only.
Okay. So you're more comfortable with a fair catch, which I happen to believe is the dumbest rule in football ever invented. Where you feel about the Rouge, I feel about the fair catch. Often, I think I don't understand it. I don't understand. It makes no sense to me, and I think it's the dumbest thing you could ever do. Is you're taking away a
So,
third of the.
so why don't you go stand on the 401 where there's three, transport trucks coming at you and see if you're going to move or not. Like when these guys are running down the field to clobber the guy that's looking up in the air at the ball and you can't see him coming and you have absolutely no idea how close they are or how close they aren't. If you feel that your life is in danger, a fair catch makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. Well, I just think there's other ways to mitigate that, and I think the CFL personally, I think the CFL has done that with
With
the
the
no
5 yard rule.
yeah with
With
the
a
no
5 yard. So
yeah
so these guys are running down the field at full speed and need to slow down to give the guy 5 yards so that he can make a move before they have a chance to react. I just don't think that makes any sense. And obviously a fair catch is better than letting the ball potentially land and continue down the field to give the kicker more of an opportunity to kick it further, even though he can't kick it that far because it just rolled farther. So fine, I get it, but I don't agree.
yeah. And I'm the opposite because that's there we go. We'll agree to disagree because that to me is just it's ludicrous. It takes away the entire special teams portion of the game, which is a third of the game. So that so I don't I've never understood that one, and
Well,
you'll never convince me otherwise. So vice versa. So now on the Rouge, on the other hand, as it is, while I understand because I understand there's a lot of people, including yourself, that don't like the Rouge and consider it a point for failure. It's not necessarily a point for failure, and I don't think the goalpost at the front of the end zone versus at the back of the end zone. I don't think that makes a difference in that in other than in wide, but it doesn't make a difference in length because if you're going to be short now in a goalpost at the back of the end zone, you're still going to have the opportunity to run it out. So that's going to still be there. But if you miss it wide, you still have that. So I just think
well,
it opens up the
but
game.
but but then the Rouge takes on a whole different concept because you can punt it into the end zone, and if the player decides not to run it out, there's nothing wrong with having a penalty to take advantage of a placement of where you're going to be if you decide not to run it out. So it's the same
But
thing the NFL is
yeah,
trying to do with their kickoff. So
yeah,
I follow where you're coming.
yeah, and the penalty is you give up the single point. That's the penalty. If you decide not to give it out, so you that and so it's a strategy. It's not a failure. It's a
Well,
strategy
but
on the
whether
part of the other team. So that's how I view it.
it's not at all a strategy because you can miss a field goal at the front of the end zone and they can decide not to bring it out. But at the back of the end zone, if you miss it, it might go out of play, and they're still going to get it where you missed it from the spot where you kicked it from. So it's completely different. But
Yeah.
let's
And,
again
and
agree to disagree.
yeah, and I know, and on that point, I absolutely agree with you. And I've said this for years that a rouge should only be awarded if the ball is within the end zone, and then it becomes a strategy. If you kick it straight through the end zone in the air, then it should not be a point. And I believe that's sort of the rule that we're going to move to, and we'll
Well,
talk.
and that is the rule in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you kick it through the end zone, the the team that's supposed to return it will get the ball further up the field than if you kick it and it rolls into the end zone. So there are strategies in that sense. It's just not a point. So, but a punt, in my opinion, can be treated like a kick if the goalposts are at the back of the end.
So I just mentioned a couple of things there that, and I said they're going to be. So are you aware of any of the upcoming structural changes to the CFL game?
Yes, I'm aware that they're making the field narrower. They're taking out the funny 10 yards in the middle, and they're making the end zone a more realistic size. So yeah.
Okay. So all of those things, you feel, or does that make you feel like you will be more engaged with the CFL game or less engaged, or does it interest you? Does it change your perception at all?
I don't think it'll change my perception at all.
Okay. So you don't feel like it doesn't to you feel like they're Americanizing, for want of a better word, the game, and therefore it becomes more open to NFL fans like yourself to at least look in on it and see, oh, maybe I can watch this.
No, I don't think they're doing it to catch NFL fans. I think they're doing it because the players are getting bigger and faster, and with the field being as large as it is, it gives that speed person a bit more of an advantage over someone that might be more of a power person. So making the field smaller for bigger, faster players just makes it a more competitive environment. I don't, and I think moving the goalpost to the back of the end zone makes all the sense in the world, even if they want to try and justify the rouge.
The okay, so was um, so yeah. So again, just talking about the different. You just mentioned the size of the field and the bigger physical or more physical players. So you do appreciate that then the difference in player types between the two leagues and how a player's physique can affect the different style of the two different games.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
Okay. All right, because some people don't. Some people don't get that. That there are that guys that play in the NFL don't necessarily doesn't necessarily mean they automatically can play in the CFL. They just often heard people make the argument that anybody can do that. Well, no, because because of the size of the field and the type of game it is, it does mean that certain physiques are more suited to one game versus the other.
No, I think all players are getting bigger and faster, whether in the NFL or in the CFL, and making the field smaller is going to make the game potentially more entertaining. I think most players in the CFL, if had the choice and had the option to play in the NFL, they probably would. The best athletes at the game of football are probably playing in the NFL as opposed to the CFL. Not to say that it's a farm league, not to say it's a development league, but it is where the players go when and if the option of playing in the NFL isn't available. I don't think many players prefer to play in the CFL over the NFL, which is why they need to have a rule to have so many Canadians on the team so that they keep those players from continuing to play football outside of the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with that's why they have a rule for so many Canadians. I think it's more just to protect jobs, to be quite honest. But and to keep the
Part time jobs. Most of these players have another job, so it's a part
no,
time.
very few actually now have. I think that's a misconception that is left over from the bad old days. Very few players have part-time jobs while they're also playing in these days. It's just in both leagues. Obviously, in the NFL, for the money, you don't need one, and in the CFL, you still need to have. You still need to be occupied all year long with football to be able to perform at that level. I think back in the day,
That might be true.
yeah. So I think that there is some that may be doing part time work in the same time. I know there's obviously a few kickers I can name that are firefighters at the same time, for instance, but those numbers are drastically down from what they're doing more PR work in the off season than they are and training than they are doing actual another job type of thing. So, okay, so um, you said you want okay. Um, okay, do play just because I touched on it, and I'm going to add a bunch of that stuff out, those pauses, so don't worry about it. But so you mentioned one of the things that you just mentioned was that you felt like the best athletes are in the NFL. Do you think how do you perceive the earnings of players in your estimation on the abilities of players? Player earnings affect your perception of the league? Does that impact you?
No, not at
Okay. Okay. So you're not driven by the contract dollars. We understand the difference, but you're not
the
driven.
only right. So I am certainly not driven to watch the sport by the dollars, but I do blame a lot of the fans for paying what we pay that allows the teams to pay what they pay. And if we wanted to make a difference, we would just have to stop going to as many games or stop supporting it as much as we do to have these ridiculous fees that they are collecting. But, they are athletes and they are entertaining us.
Okay. No, I just because I do know a lot of people use that as a reason that again they will not watch the CFL simply because they don't feel because they don't get paid enough, therefore they're no good. Type that they feel there's a direct correlation to the ability of the athlete based on how much they're paid, and I've never agreed with that myself. So
Right. No, and I definitely don't think so. And the other thing that drives young athletes is the amount of money they could potentially make in a sport. Like, if you're really good at football, you might be really good at baseball or basketball as well. And I think a lot of times when those super duper athletes are considering a choice when they're in high school, they may make a choice based on what they could potentially make, how much fun they could potentially have playing the sport they're having, or the risks they might go through from a health standpoint before they decide which sport to focus on when they're in their late teens or even early 20s. So,
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and those guys where they have if they've got multiple sports decisions to make, yeah, they need to, yeah, definitely. But it's more about I was talking more about just you know as I say, there's this perception of the money versus the ability, and I often wonder about that of people's argument.
no,
So
I think anybody would want to make more money if they're good at it, assuming that their job could afford to pay them more.
absolutely,
Doesn't
yeah.
even matter if you're a teacher, a janitor, or work at the convenience store. Every
And
employee wants to say
yeah, and I would never begrudge somebody going to wanting to go to the NFL because you're making $50 million or even $6 million or whatever the minimum is nowadays. It's just money. It's life changing money. Why wouldn't you do it
absolutely,
if you can?
absolutely,
And why wouldn't you keep doing it as long as you can if you can? It's the reason that
absolutely,
the best job in the world is the third string quarterback holding the clipboard, right? Because you're never going to play, but you're going to get paid, and even if it's only minimum, it's still pretty good coin. So you're never going to have to worry about that CTS or whatever down the road, but you do, but you're still cashing a check for how many years?
However, these athletes are at a different level than the
Oh,
average person, so
absolutely.
they have an ego that needs to be fed too, not just the pocketbook.
Yeah, and I understand that too, and I'm not trying to say that these guys are not great athletes because even to be considered to be a third string quarterback holding the clipboard, you're already in the upper echelon of 1%. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Have you ever followed U Sports and U Sports football? What is now University in Canada football?
No,
No. Okay, so
sure. Went to a few Mustang games just because there were girls there too, and it was a fun place to be, but never really followed Canadian college at all. Big in the U.S. Love it. Been to many U.S. college games. Love the tailgating. Love the whole experience of the whole weekend, not just the game itself.
and so what do you think the level of player coming out of U Sports? How do you perceive that? Not necessarily versus NCAA, but just period. And what do you perceive that? What's your base perception of a U Sport player?
Well, they're still amazing players, and are still selected out of a large pool, and they aren't just getting there because they have to fill spots. They are very good athletes and play the game at a high level. So,
Okay, good, cool. Alrighty. Okay, so we talked about the upcoming rule changes, and you said that you didn't think it would impact you necessarily in interest, and like you don't think it would change your interest level and make you engage more with the league. Okay, all right. So what would make you engage more? What could the CFL do to? What would they need to do to have you be more engaged?
well, that's something I have never thought about. So I would certainly need a little time to think of that. For me, there's so many things about the NFL that excite me and that interest me. I'm sure they do a lot of them here in the CFL as well. Like I love the pools. I love the idea, that there is a specific game when 90% of the games are played so that I don't have to be guessing if it's a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Friday when they're playing. It is very structured as to the dates. They are adding dates in the NFL, which is driving me a bit bananas because it's washing down the players' rest time or ability to prepare for a game. So, I'd love it if they would just play on Mondays and Sundays and then start playing on Saturdays when college football is over, like they do. The whole Thursday night game for me is a trouble. Like they never have good games. They seem to not be able to schedule their bye weeks properly enough that the teams on a bye should be playing on Thursday so that they have 2 10-day rest periods instead of one, longer rest and then a short window. So it's just bizarre to me that the NFL has decided to go for the money and play on Thursdays also. The CFL is all over the schedule. I never know who's playing when. They don't seem to have proper East and West divisions. So when it comes to playoff times, there could be somebody from the other side moving over. They do a lot of that in hockey too. It's bizarre to me that they just don't have number one play number eight and move on.
So if I told you that there was a regular every week schedule that you could follow, every like there is Friday night football is every Friday night in the CFL there is a game that simply there's a game every Friday night, and the rest of the weekend you can watch or not watch, but you can watch a game every Friday night throughout the season.
Yeah,
As
I knew that. I
yeah,
knew that.
but that doesn't impact you. I just mentioned it because you said you're now they also move to the Thursday night games, which make me crazy as well. And I agree with you 100% that it also messes with short days and makes the schedule wonky because there are teams coming off 4 days rest or 5 days rest versus 7 or 8 days rest for some for the team that they're playing the next week, and some as many as 10 days rest. So it's really long, and it can be quite bad. And I agree with you. That's not good. Does the number of teams in the CFL impact your decision not to watch it at all?
No, but it is odd to me that they try to have an East and a West instead of just having one division because there's so few teams. So,
Okay.
and it used to drive me nuts that a quarter of the league was called Rough Rider.
Yeah. Well, yes. And but that's again. Yeah. I don't have an issue with that, and I don't, and I often wonder, without getting too into it right now, how many people that say that what you just said know why there's two Rough Riders, know why there's two divisions, know why they maintain two divisions. The same reason that there's two conferences in the NFL, the same reason that they maintain two conferences, rather than do the same reason that they do. Like you mentioned, there's a team that moves back and forth. Well, that's just a wild card team. Change the name and it's a wild card team. So we call it, we call it the crossover. Every other league calls it the wild card. So just call, you don't have a problem with the wild card, but a lot of people seem to have the same issue that it's. I don't understand that. I've never.
I actually, I actually love the wild card because it allows those better teams to make it into the playoffs. What I hate is that they have to give each division in the NFL a home game in the playoffs when they don't deserve it. I feel like the number one wild card, if they're better than the fourth division leader, should be hosting the home game. And you know, getting an advantage from doing what they've done. So the reason the NFL, can have two divisions and do have the AFC and the NFC from the history of the American Football League and the National Football League, makes sense because of all the numbers of teams. So you do need to have people that you play regularly. Where in Canada, there's only, I'm going to guess, I think it's 9 teams, right? Like you don't need two divisions for 9 teams.
Yeah. Well, you do, you do if you want to. Again, as you talked about, maintain history, because until like a lot of people don't recognize that the CFL comes from two different leagues, just like the NFL comes from the AFL and the NFL. The CFL comes from the Western Football Conference as a separate league, and the Big East, for want of a better word, the Big Four as a separate league, and they were two completely separate leagues initially until 1958. So until relatively recently, it was two leagues until they officially joined to become the Canadian Football League. So so
Okay.
that's where the two divisions come from, and then again, the national championship historically was played between the two divisions to become the national championship, not the league championship, the national championship, which is the Grey Cup, and then it became the trophy for the new league. So that's where those two, and when there were two leagues, you had two teams in two separate leagues named the same thing. So that's why there are two teams named, or there were two teams of the same thing, because when they amalgamated into one league, they both kept the name. It's goofy, I agree. But that's where those two names came from, because there was two separate leagues, the Canadian Rugby Union, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But nonetheless, that's where it comes from. So
All right. I'll accept it, but I think the current format is broken and it should
yeah,
be
and
fixed.
and you're not alone. And there's a lot of people in the CFL that would prefer to be 1 through 6 rather than top two in each division plus the next, or top three with a wild card or a crossover as we call it. Okay, yeah. So okay. All right. So what else do we want to talk about? I was going to ask you. Let me see if look. I'm sorry. I'm looking down at my piece of paper again. We've covered, John, I think we've covered most of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Um, I guess the question that I had to end with, and maybe we'll take a break, and if we need to, we can come back and record some more. But if we to end at this point would be after this. Now that I've got you semi-engaged in at least this process, would you be more interested in attending a game than you would have been before this process?
No.
No. Okay. So you would. So if I said, "Hey, I got an extra ticket coming up with my season tickets," and you would not be interested in taking that ticket and going down and exploring the game.
What I'm saying is I wouldn't be any more interested today than I was yesterday, is all I'm saying. So, yes, I enjoy, any sport live and going to a game. I'm certainly not going to dismiss it because I think it's ridiculous, unless, of course, we're talking about indoor soccer. I mean, indoor lacrosse, but we're not, so we don't need to worry about it.
All right. All right. Well, again, I want to just we'll end there for now then, and maybe I will get you down to a game with us this summer or this fall, and we can hang out and have a beer and yell at the different rules and carry on from there. So
Hey, no different than if I told you I had an extra ticket to go to LA to watch the Chargers play. You would probably join me.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. I would have, as I say, I would have to drag out my Dave Dickinson jersey. So, uh, yeah, and I would have preferred it if they were still in San Diego. But there you go.
Well, and so would I, even though they originated in LA.
Right.
So they were in LA before they went to San Diego.
Yeah. Were they not? Yeah. Were they not the Gulls? No, that was the NBA team. That was San Diego Gulls.
And you'll notice I do call them my Chargers as opposed to the LA Chargers because they're just the Chargers. I'm not
Right.
sure I care where they play.
Right.
And the biggest thing that drives me nuts about the NFL right now, I know I'm a big proponent of all of the interaction between the fans and the whole deal. I love fantasy football, and I'm a commissioner of a league, and I play in another. But I do believe that the fantasy football is driving people away from loving a team to preferring to like players. It's very difficult for me to have certain team players on my team because I am a big Charger fan and I can't support the Raiders or Denver or Kansas City, even if it's a great player. I still don't want him. So I'd rather be a fan of the game of football and the team that I support as opposed to just the players.
Agreed. I agree with you 100%. I got involved with the CFL fantasy for the first time this year, and I could not pick Edmonton players no matter how much I wanted to or needed to. They just wouldn't be there. So I get it. And I agree. I'm there to watch the game, not to watch the player necessarily, or at least not to watch the player for that. But you're an avid fantasy, NFL fantasy player at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if there was a legitimate CFL fantasy draft, would you be at all interested in that? Is it do you like the gambling aspect of the fantasy, or do you like the money, like putting the $10 in the pot, or is it more about just the process and and the game itself?
Ribbon the other players and the other managers in my league more than it is
Right.
anything else.
Yeah. It's okay. it's it's the abuse factor.
You got it.
Abuse is always good as long as it's handled properly.
And the fact that I
And you
can
can't
stay
and you
away.
can't Yeah, and if you're dishing it out, you got to be willing to take it. That's all that
Right.
happens.
And
Yeah.
and the other thing I'd like to say is my second favorite team in the NFL is whoever's playing Buffalo. Because when I was young, all I had to do was watch Buffalo. I didn't have time shifting, and they were just a horrible team to watch. I went to my first NFL game in the Bills Stadium. I forget which stadium it was at the time, and it was just a horrible experience. The fans weren't fun. There were people doing things in the stands that they shouldn't have been doing. It's one of the only stadiums in the NFL that has a jail in it, and it's there for a reason. So
Right.
I am not a Bills.
I never got on the Bills bandwagon. I never got on the NFL bandwagon. I am if at all, as whenever anybody asks me, I say I'm a Chiefs fan, and they go, oh, and then I go, no, no. I've been a Chiefs fan since 1977 when Marv Levy left Montreal to go to the NFL, and that's the only
There you
reason I'm a Chiefs fan. So yeah. However, I couldn't tell you anything other than that about the Chiefs. So there you go. All right, let's leave it there. We're going to take a break. If that's it, if we don't come back, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And once it's posted, I'll let you know where you can find it, so at least you can see your own smiling face, and you might be internet famous. Who knows? We'll talk to you
who knows?
soon. This is GT signing off on Conversations with GT. And again, thanks, Sean. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.